Well, hey, everybody, great to see you today. What a great day to be together for worship. I'm so glad you're here, and I really can't wait to share this message with you. It's been challenging my life. Hopefully, will be an encouragement and a challenge to you as well. We're in a series called Life Under Construction, and we've been taking some life lessons from the Old Testament book of Nehemiah as we look at intentionally seeing change that's going to last for the long haul, things that are necessary changes in life that perhaps we haven't gotten around to or we haven't attacked for whatever reason. We want to see some change happen. And over the past 2 weeks, we've been evaluating the areas of our lives that frankly they need to change, but we haven't gotten there. And we know that they're probably not going to change on their own. So the series is about addressing change and with the help of God, seeing progress in places that we would love to see real and lasting change. As a quick history recap as we jump into Nehemiah, back in 587 BC, the Babylonians attacked Israel. They destroyed Jerusalem, they leveled the temple, they left it in a heap of rubble, and they took a bunch of the Jews captive back to Babylon. A few decades later, a handful of the Jews were allowed to go back and start to rebuild their homeland. There wasn't much of an economic system. There wasn't really a leadership structure, nothing but ruins everywhere. And the people were pretty hopeless for about 100 years. But then a guy named Nehemiah, who was living in Persia, was brokenhearted for his people and determined that change needed to take place. So with the Persian king's blessing, he travels 1,000 miles back to his homeland to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. Is that a pretty good summary? Are you with me? Okay, that's where we find Nehemiah in chapter 2. He's now in Jerusalem, and it's on the cusp or the beginning of this construction project he's about to go under. In chapter 2, verse 11, here's what it says from Nehemiah's voice. So I arrived in Jerusalem 3 days later. I slipped out during the night, taking only a few others with me. I had not told anyone about the plans God had put in my heart for Jerusalem. We took no pack animals with us except the donkey I was riding. And after dark, I went out through the valley gate, past the jackal's well, and over the dung gate to inspect the broken walls and burned gates. Then I went to the fountain gate and to the king's pool, but my donkey couldn't get through the rubble. So though it was still dark, I went up to the Kidron Valley instead, inspecting the wall, before I turned back and entered again through the valley gate. The city officials didn't know I'd been out there or what I was doing, for I had not yet said anything to anyone about my plans. I had not yet spoken to the Jewish leaders, the priests, the nobles, the officials, or anyone else in the administration. All right, Nehemiah has already been on a journey toward change up to this point. He's been on a journey for 2 chapters, but about 4 months we know for sure that he's been thinking and praying about what he wants to see change in his life. And he knows he's ready now to take real action. And so he scopes out the situation and he takes inventory of where things are as he gets started. He inspects the walls. He gets a realistic view of the condition of the walls at the moment. So here's the question as we launch in today. When was the last time that you took real inventory of your life? That you looked at your life and took inventory? When was the last time that you paused long enough to reflect on where you are, looked at where you'd like to be and what it will take to get there? We've been talking for a few weeks about steps similar to this. We started with this idea that Nehemiah sat down and he grieved. He mourned the situation that was so distant from him, but yet so close to his heart in Jerusalem. And last week we talked about facing some of the fears that keep us from moving forward into the change we want to see happen. But this is a step getting down to the nitty gritty of actually moving things forward and getting going with action. When was the last time you took inventory of your health or your finances or your relationships or your faith? There's so many areas that are these big areas in life. And if we aren't evaluating or taking inventory of them, we are simply subject to how they are, not how they should be. Nehemiah understood this principle of change. Reflection leads to redirection. Reflection, looking at something, taking inventory, leads to redirection, actually seeing change happen. Now today we can there's so many tools, so many useful apps, so many websites, and so many things to get us organized and make sure we got everything straight and our lives are perfectly aligned. How's that working? Is it working perfectly? Sometimes the sheer number of them is overwhelming. Let me give you an example. If you would get out your phone for a second, And we're getting out our phone basically every week in the series, so just be ready, okay? Get out your phone and just slide to the page that has your mail app. Don't click on your mail app and check your mail right now, okay? But your mail app. How many of you have a little red oval that has a number inside? Anybody have a ridiculously high number of unread emails right now? Okay, share with somebody near you how many unread emails you got. Just let them know, just confession time. Confession time. That's a really long number if it takes that long. All right. For you overachievers who make sure every app has a 0, I would like to offer you something like a free cookie or something, but you don't eat carbs. So, your reward is you are already awesome. Way to go. Like, congratulations. Nehemiah doesn't offer us a solution to we have the organizational systems available to help everything be up to date. He doesn't have a solution necessarily for how we keep up with all that. Right? But what he does recognize is that reflection leads to redirection. If you would take the time to take inventory on how things are really going in life, be honest about the outcomes, you know where to start building in the wall first. Maybe you're doing great right now with handling your finances, but spiritually your life is in shambles. Or maybe you're doing great with Jesus, but your health is faltering. You get the idea. You get to take inventory of the walls of your life so you know pretty clearly where the weak spots are that need the most attention. Nehemiah takes inventory of the situation, helping him prepare for change. And when he's ready to get started, when he's ready to actually start putting rocks on top of rocks, what does he do? He brings other people into the equation. Notice the plural nature that makes a turn starting in the next verse, verse 17. Maybe. But now I said to them, you know very well what trouble we are in. Jerusalem lies in ruins and its gates have been destroyed by fire. Let us build the walls of Jerusalem and end this disgrace. Then I told them about how the gracious hand of God had been on me and about my conversation with the king, and they replied at once, yes, let's rebuild the wall. So they began the good work. So Nehemiah circles back to the vision he had about the situation. This is the thing that he identified, like we talked about a few weeks ago. It needs to change. And now he's sharing it with other people. And he's let them know this isn't just an idea that he formed on a whim. He's been thinking about this. He's been praying about this for months and months. He's been asking God for clarity and favor. God's been providing both. And now he sees this God-sized vision with God-sized support and blessing. And this is a key passage in the whole book. Take a look again at verse 18, the second part of verse 18, their response to Nehemiah. These folks that he's now sharing the vision with, they say, yes, let's rebuild the wall. So they began the good work. I think this is a turning point in the entire story. This is a critical hinge verse, not only for Nehemiah's life, but frankly, for the history and future of Israel. You could argue this is the most important verse in the whole book. Because two incredibly important things happen that seem simple at first, but if we dig under it a little bit, there's a lot there to see areas of change. First of all, from this moment forward in the book of Nehemiah, at almost every turn, Nehemiah is with people. He has people with him. The vision goes from an idea or a burden for one person to becoming like an us project. There's a lot of people involved. It's pretty incredible. I love how the Message says this verse. The Message says, we are with you, let's get started. They rolled up their sleeves, ready for the good work. In this moment, Nehemiah's vision goes from God and me to God and we. From this point forward, no longer is it just a cupbearer from Persia hoping for something big. Now there are other people involved in a God-sized vision for change. And I know you aren't attempting to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem, right? You don't probably have to have masons and all kinds of other skilled people like that. Whatever it is in your life though, whatever God is pressing in on you, is just as important to him as rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem. Don't think for 1 second that what you're going through or what you're dealing with is any less important to God than Nehemiah's work. He cares deeply about your life and about you changing your, quote, broken walls. God cares deeply about that. And he longs for you to be the healthiest, best version of yourself. So as you consider to attack the areas of life you want to see change, one critical question that we've got to wrestle is this. Who are your we're with you people? Who are your people that are like, we're with you, let's do this, rolling up their sleeves, ready to go to battle with you about whatever God's doing in your life? This is a great chance for you to get out your phone one more time. If you got the Notes app that we've been looking at the last few weeks, all right, you can go to that app. If you don't have one, you can start it now. Open a note, okay, and write down, first of all, the question. Who are your we are with you people? Who are the people? And write their names down, right? You might have different people for different areas or challenges of your life. Specific to the areas that we're talking about, that we're identifying over the last few weeks, who are those people? And if you have no names there, if you're like, I got nothing, let me suggest to you that's a big area to address immediately. I don't need to tell you that God made us relational and that accountability is often the biggest motivator to moving forward. Beyond that, we just need each other in so many ways. Somebody else needs you, and the challenge that you're addressing in your life, they need it because of how God's working in their life right now. And you need other people on your journey. Maybe Nehemiah already knew this great truth that came from the mouth of Solomon in Ecclesiastes 4:12, where he says, a person standing alone can be attacked and defeated, but two standing back to back, two can stand back to back and conquer. Three are even better, for a triple braided cord is not easily broken. Together is almost always better than alone. Isolation has been the death of so many would-be great life-changing efforts that people have made everywhere all the time, but they die on a hill called, I'll just do this one by myself. I got this. I'm just going to tackle it myself. And that is where change goes to die, the hill of I'll do this by myself. We don't want life under isolation. We want life under construction. I mean, think about it from the perspective of actual construction. Have you ever seen a construction worker working by themselves? You ever seen that before? Of course not. You know the joke, right? How many construction workers does it take to dig a hole? No. 6. 1 to dig the hole and 5 for moral support, right? I don't know. That's a whole different issue you can address with your local authorities. But listen, if we ever want to see real life change, life under construction is not an alone thing. A life under construction alone is a path to failure. Assassins work alone. People under construction, doing construction, always bring other people into the process. Now, if you're an assassin, repent and turn to Jesus, okay? We will help you as soon as we alert the authorities. We will help you work through whatever you're dealing with. If you want to see real construction in some area, friend, you got to get some names down. Who are your we are with you people? One of the key words here, maybe the key word that you probably just could pass over in verse 18 is the word they. They. There's other people involved from this point forward. Friends, God never intended for you to make the hardest changes of your life alone. And I would take it a step further and suggest to you that one of the most compelling things about this verse for all of us is that we need not just some people to help us, go to work out or, make sure we're getting to work on time or whatever. We need each other. We need the church, and the church needs you. All of us here today, we're just a gathering of a bunch of individuals under construction, and we need each other. Jesus knew what he was doing, friends. He gave his church to come alongside you, to pray with you, to love you, to encourage you, sometimes to motivate you. And sometimes we don't want to tell anybody else about our construction areas because frankly, some of our construction areas are embarrassing or, they're private. We've been dealing with an addiction for a long time or a habit or some kind of a insecurity that we would rather really not talk to anyone about except for Jesus because we know he already knows. We can just talk to him. And yet God gave us each other to help make us stronger together. It's really true. And even Jesus lived by the principle. He had 12 people, the disciples, in his life that he did life and ministry of talking about stuff all the time. Who are your we are with you people? And if you're part of this church and you can't identify any "they're with me" people, let me lovingly say to you that is your problem. That is on you. Because on every team in this church and in every group that is existing or being formed, there are people right now willing to be your people. They are not perfect at all. Some of them are weird. Starting right here, okay? Everybody's weird to somebody, but there are people that are ready to be your people, and you need them to be your people. You aren't your best without them. Frankly, you were never meant to rebuild your walls by yourself. Even just you and Jesus, you were meant to do it in community with all of the messiness that comes with that. And perhaps even more important than that is that they need you. There is someone else that needs you to be their people. They don't have you on their list right now because you've not made yourself available to that. Somebody needs you to come alongside them and encourage them and prod them forward and occasionally call them out and pray with them. They need you. And you are gifted and positioned right now to be a godsend to somebody else's life. Friends, what are we waiting for? Let's get life under construction in the ways God has specifically invited us to do so and designed us to do so. One of the key ways to do that is to get in a group. And I'm going to beat the drum for just a second, all right? This week, you already know, right now, you can join a group. There's like 1 million different groups. There's groups on different days. There's groups on campus. There's groups off campus. There's women's, men's, couples, singles, formerly singles, like whatever, okay? There's 1 million kinds of groups all the time, and maybe they don't fit perfectly into a box, like the exact kind of everything that you wish, like I got to be 4:30 a.m. to 5:30 on Saturday morning on the west side of St. Louis at a Panera. Like I don't know if we have the perfect box. What I'm saying is that's not how construction works. You got to make adjustments and link arms with some other people and take the necessary steps to honor God in your life and to help them do the same. Some of us, it's just time to jump in and commit. Who are your people? Who are your people? Now, Nehemiah had some people, but he also had some other people in his life. They were not the we're with you people. They were the we're not with you people. Verse 19, they show up. When Sanballat, Tobiah, and Gershom the Arab heard our plan, they scoffed contemptuously. What are you doing? Are you rebelling against the king? They asked. And I replied, the God of heaven will help us succeed. We, his servants, will start rebuilding this wall, but you have no share, legal right, or historical claim in Jerusalem. You are not in the club. What are you doing here? We'll talk about that later. But immediately they show up to challenge him. Just when actual change is about to take place, all of this dreaming and thinking and planning, Nehemiah is like about ready to pick up some rocks, and his not-so people show up. We know who they are, Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem. Get used to hearing from them. You know what's really frustrating about not my people? They don't go away. They just always hang around. Just when change is going to take root, they show up bringing all the negativity with them. Is anybody surprised? Isn't that kind of how life goes? I mean, there are always people around that are the opposite of the guy in the water boy, like, you can do it. There's always people that are like, you can't do it. You're probably not going to make it. I'm not sure you even have what it takes. I don't think you're going to be great. I don't believe in you. They don't say it exactly like that, but that's what it feels like. There are more you can't do it people out there than we like to believe. And some of you may have even written down a Sanballat or Tobiah sort of name in your app. And let me suggest that if every time you try to take a positive step forward in your life to make change that honors God, and you got one of those people that's constantly sideswiping you, they're always telling you that why do you keep doing this? Why do you got to worry about talking to God about it? Why, blah, blah, blah. Maybe just some of us need to say no thanks to a few friends or close acquaintances and bring in some new blood. We need a new list. Now, I'm not talking about your spouse or your kids, okay? You got to work through those, all right? But listen, I'm saying sometimes it takes intentionally changes the landscape of the people I'm bringing into my We Are With You list to see different results from what we've seen before. Now, chapter 3 is fascinating because it kind of lists a bunch of the people. Nobody preaches on Nehemiah. You've never heard a sermon on Nehemiah chapter 3, I would bet. because nobody preaches on this one. It's the inventory of who did what where around the entire wall of Jerusalem. And I'm going to read it to you very, very slowly now. I'm kidding. I'm going to give you a sample. Here's a quick sample. Nehemiah 3:3. The fish gate was built by the sons of Hassanah. They laid the beams, they set up its doors, and installed its bolts and bars. Meremoth, son of Uriah and grandson of Hakaz, repaired the next section of wall. Beside him were Meshullah, son of Berechiah and grandson of Meshezabel, and then Zadok, son of Baanah. Doing pretty good, huh? Okay. Next were the people from Tekoa, though their leaders refused to work with the construction supervisors. I love that verse. Like, real people in the Bible. Whenever somebody's like, the Bible's made up, you're like, nah, who puts that in there if you're making it up? Verse 6, the old city gate was repaired by Joiada, son of Peshiah, and Meshullam, son of Besodeiah. They laid the beams, set up its doors, and installed its bolts and bars. Next to them were Melatiah from Gibeon, Jadon from Meronoth, people from Gibeah, and people from Mizpah, the headquarters of the governor of the province west of the Euphrates River, and on and on. The whole chapter is that, okay? And it's awesome. Not because the names are awesome, which they are. We have a clear picture of the work, what it looked like in real places. Many of those places have been excavated. You can walk up to the gate today and see the remains of the gate that was rebuilt by Nehemiah's people. Reading this is like somebody took a drone and flew a drone around the city while they were working. And then later they watched it back and they're like, oh, Mahmadiah, oh, Jedediah, there's where he stood, okay? And wrote it down. It's one person and family next to a person in a family, almost literally linking arms and doing a stinking hard thing. And they got to work rebuilding a 1.7 mile wall. Together. Together's always better. So the first part of verse 18, the we nature, is a big piece. The second part may be a bit subtle, but it is critically important. We got to dig beneath the surface a bit. Without it, we are just hanging out with a bunch of people and we're saying a bunch of cool names and we're having a fun little party on the outside of the wall, but we don't make any progress toward real change. Look back at the very last sentence of Nehemiah 2:18. It says this, so they began the good work. Now, in context of everything in Nehemiah, I think this is a huge truth. Because you know what would have been a whole lot easier? Not beginning the good work. They knew how challenging it was going to be. They've already taken inventory. It's an uphill battle. Nehemiah had surveyed the walls. He knew it was going to be hard. It's 1.7 miles. Today it's about 2.5 miles, but it was a little smaller. But the walls, this is not a chain link fence in the subdivision, all right? 39 feet tall in most places and 8 feet thick. There are some sections of Nehemiah's wall that are measured at 26 feet wide. This is to keep armies from getting in. It was massive. They knew it was going to be hard. And Sanballat and company would be over there throwing jabs at them the whole time. But they knew, I think quite obviously, what they concluded was this. No amount of work now would be harder than the reality they face later if they did nothing. No amount of work that they had to do now would be worse than if they did nothing. They began the good work because not beginning the good work had its own really hard result. Here's what Nehemiah did and what we have got to do also, friends. It's simple. Choose your hard. Choose your hard. I didn't say it was easy. I said it was simple. You choose your hard. Change is hard. It seems like it's always hard, but you know what's also hard? Not changing, not seeing a result that's going to honor God, living with the same results that we've had for a long time. That's also hard. So you get to choose your hard. Now there's this guy named Marcus Taylor who does motivational speaking, and he put together a video called Choose Your Hard. Take a look.
It's hard to practice perseverance. It's hard to practice compassion and forgiveness. It's hard to set personal goals. It's hard to take care of yourself. It's hard to be broke. It's hard to live in bitterness and unforgiveness. It's difficult to be jealous of somebody. It's hard to let yourself go. It can be difficult to lay your life down and humble yourself and rid yourself of the disease of ego, pride, and comparison and competition. It's difficult. It's hard to be creative. It's hard to be an introvert. It's hard to be an extrovert. Singleness can be difficult. Marriage can be difficult. Raising your children on your own can be difficult. It's hard to wake up early. It's hard to wake up late. But there's a reward on the other side of waking up early. If you wake up late, you've lost too much daylight. What somebody else did before you woke up, now you only have a fraction of the day to get it done. There's a reward on the other side of one pain, and there is regret on the other side of the other pain. And if you're going to win the reward, you're going to have to persevere. You're going to need endurance. You're going to need to be consistent. And on the other end of the pendulum, there is the pain of regret, where you did nothing because you were afraid you would make a mistake. The pain of regret will hurt you. So choose your heart. Make a decision.
Anybody else want to run through a wall? Like, I don't know what Marcus Taylor looks like, but can't you imagine him being totally jacked? Probably doesn't wear a shirt ever, you know. A life under construction and a life in disarray, you know what? They both have some pain, but they're different pain. One is headed toward change and hope, doing hard stuff. That's the right hard stuff. One settles back into the pain you already know and experiences the cycle of pain over and over again. You choose your hard. And isn't it crazy that when the real stuff that we really long to see change, sometimes it feels especially hard? It's like harder than the other stuff was hard. Good work is usually hard work. And yet there are going to be hard things either way. Choose your hard. Choose hard work now or hard results later. That's the reality. Choose your hard work now or hard results later. There are going to be some hard things. Sometimes just bringing other people along in the process is hard. We don't like to do that. Sometimes just taking inventory and being honest is really hard. We don't want to see. And getting started to tackle something we don't really want to face is hard. But think about if you do not start the good work. We end up with hard results later anyway. It's just delayed hard. Different hard, many times worse hard, and less God-honoring and less fruitful for the life he's called us to live than if we just gone life under construction the first time. Nehemiah and the people of Israel chose their hard and they started construction, and so can we. And you know one reason why we can is because Jesus has already done it for us. He's modeled it for us. The reality is Jesus chose a hard. He didn't use those words, but he bowed and prayed in the Garden of Gethsemane on a day leading into the worst couple days of his life. He was in pain, realizing the call that God had called him to sacrifice himself for us. And Jesus said to the Father in the Garden of Gethsemane, he prayed, Lord, if you could take this one away, man, that'd be great. But if not, may your will be done. He chose the hard that honored God, and that hard meant that he was going to be beaten and that he was going to be bruised and ultimately killed on a cross. His blood poured out for me and you. He chose his hard. I'm sure glad he did, aren't you? So we're going to pause for a moment and reflect on that. If you came in today, you should have the little communion cup. We're getting in the habit of having those all the time. And if you did not get one because you didn't know that, throw a hand up. We'll have somebody bring you one right now. They're on the ready to bring you a cup. The bread represents or reminds us of the broken body of Jesus, and the juice, his blood. His heart gave us an amazing, amazing sacrifice that we can today be covered by his blood and his gift for us. So let's pray. Lord, thank you that Jesus did not walk away from the hardest decision any person would ever make, to give himself and take on all of the sin of all of the world. I cannot imagine. And yet we're sure grateful that he did. And may it be an inspiration for us to choose hard as well, walking in ways that honor him. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.